Hello there, this is the guy that had tested Hodgkin extensively, and welcome back to today's AFK journey video. So we have been playing with Hodgkin extensively for the past 1 week ever since he got released, and I had my initial skepticism for this character, but after testing him more as well as seeing how he deals with Harak as Harak got released, I actually have a change in idea for this character. And in today's video we're gonna break down his usage, his current meta relevancy, as well as whether or not we will see this unit improving moving forward, which is his longevity part, and talk about whether or not you should pull for him or skip for him, right? So starting off with the PvE side of things, let's introduce the few team archetypes that he would be good in, or he is currently good in. So number one would be the Zoo team, because of his ability to summon the Ardent Believer, making him the mini Fresto type unit, as his 2 summons will get the additional shielding to block out the enemy as they advance forward. They also provide for this additional disruption against the enemy in the event they die, so he is going to go well with the Zoo teams because of this idea. And also secondly, the Mauler team. So for the Mauler team side, I think in general he's probably considered more as a tech choice, because in the Mauler teams what I will consider him to be would be a anti-physical frontliner. And right here we have another scenario. We'll be running him in the Graveborn factional team and against 5 1-tile physical attacker, which is the best case scenario for Hodgkin, because he will be able to maximize his ultimate and third skill damage potential while stealing a whole bunch of energy to spam his ultimate. So you guys will realize him taking no damage and his energy bar charging particularly quickly, because he will be stealing a lot of energy as all these units are surrounding him. So you can hit like 2 or 3 units with the rendering cleave to get a whole lot of energy to spam your ultimate to buff up your physical attacker like Cecile or other physical damage dealer you can include in your team. Right here we went for a more hybrid setup with Carolina, because I think Carolina's a lot stronger as the battle draws out. But yeah, basically the use of Hodgkin is mostly as a frontliner as well as an anti-physical tech in the AFK stage side. Let us move on to the next part of the analysis. I think generically speaking, Hodgkin is gonna be really hard to use, because I think first of all, Wilder's still really dominant right there. Right, there are a whole bunch of good Wilders characters in general that people run that are all good against Hodgkin, right? They're all magical attackers, they all have the elemental advantage, and they are pretty common in most people's collection. So defensively, I think Hodgkin is gonna be really tough, unless, right, Harak of physical attackers in general becomes more and more prevalent, and that's where I think there is a possibility for our dear Hodgkin to come up as an anti-physical tech unit. So there is this possibility, but right now it really depends on your meta of the bracket and also whether or not your opponent has the answer. So Hodgkin is definitely usable, and Hodgkin has multiple users other than just being like a Harak counter. Like I mentioned yesterday, right, there is a few ways to counter Harak, and Hodgkin is probably one of the best. But another unit that Hodgkin can counter is actually Vala, because Hodgkin right here can be a Vala bait to take the notice from Vala. So Vala will continuously attack Hodgkin, but Hodgkin will be enter the Phantom state, which means that he will be able to take no damage while Vala is outputting all her skills on him. So that's one way you can use Hodgkin for, which is an anti-Vala tool as well. Another unit which I think fares really well against, right, as a Hodgkin is obviously like your physical attackers like Sylvina that goes after a fixed target, so you can use your Hodgkin as a Sylvina bait as well. So I guess you can use Hodgkin against assassin teams in general in the PvP side of things, as well as Harak teams or even the Mauler teams in the most common setting right now. Okay, so that's his current usage, but generally on the defensive side, not so much, because I think Lily May, Damien, Ardent, Iron, they are more common in most people's server, so that's why he's not that good, but usable depending on the situation. Now for the Dream Realm side of things, despite Hodgkin having a debuff, I highly doubt he will ever see much use, at least not with the current bosses right now, because like first of all, physical teams in general, they are not the strongest yet, like at least not a pure physical team. Like you have a Harak carry, but Hodgkin doesn't synergize with Harak that well. So if we base it around what we see right now, number one, team building is going to be a problem because some of the strongest attackers and the buffers, they are in the Wilder and Mauler side. So putting a Gravebond into the team lowers your fractional bonus, which lowers your damage output. That's number one. Number two is, in general, the team just doesn't fit too well with Hodgkin in a Dream Realm side. Even with the debuffing ability, he doesn't offer that much for the team in the bossing compartment for you to even want to use him. So I don't think he will be meta, but there is a possibility that, let's say, if there's a very, very powerful physical attacker that need that, phantom ability of his to tank up, there is a possibility that he might be used, which is usually, I'll say in that case, more on the Primal Lord side, right? Because usually the Primal Lord will introduce some insane mechanics, and that's where Hodgkin might see some use, but really unlikely, at least on the bossing compartment. Based on what we mentioned earlier, his meta relevancy right now, I'll say, is in the niche level, but I do see this situation improving because we have been flooded with a whole bunch of magical attackers or just good magical units in general where Hodgkin doesn't shine against, right? So obviously in those kind of situations, he's not that good, but with the release of Harak so far, we have tested quite a bit against Harak or just physical teams in general with Hodgkin, and I can safely say, right, if they do release more and more units that are as strong as Harak, or units which are going to dominate the meta, you need some sort of counter option or units that can counter them, then Hodgkin could come into play. So with regards to his future movements or his future meta relevancy, I could safely see him improving over time. I could see him being a long-term stock where his value will only increase with a larger hero pool, right? And having more and more powerful physical units, then you can definitely slot him into your team from time to time to use him as this anti-melee or anti-physical tech. So if you ask me whether or not he's a pull or skip, I think, let's say, if you are considering his general relevancy right now, most probably a skip. But if you're like myself, somebody who considers like what he could do in the future or how he will be like moving forward, what I can advise you is to pull him slowly, get a few copies, so that if he does become meta moving forward, then you will have easier access to him to Supreme Plus, such that you can fill him properly for the various game modes that you can use him across. Namely, I'll say AFK stages as well as the PvP side, because I honestly don't think he will ever see meta usage for the Dream Realm side of things. Although I could be wrong, because they could introduce a boss which could favor his mechanic, then he might appear there as well. So that's pretty much it for the pull or skip for Hodgkin. So if you're a whale, I recommend him, getting him to Supreme Plus and keeping him in the collection. If you're free to play, but you feel that he will be good in the future, get a few copies, slowly build him up. If you feel that whatever I say is bullshit, you can skip him completely. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more. See you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.